Welcome to this explainer. If you've ever looked at a beautifully designed website and thought to yourself, how on earth did they build that? Well, we're going to find out together. Today, we are taking you from absolute beginner to writing pro-level front-end code in just a matter of minutes. Let's dive into the structural language of the web. Here's our exact roadmap for today. We'll start with the front-end foundation, move into basic tags and elements, cover structuring your web page, learn organizing data with tables, and finally, building user input forms.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the front-end foundation.
We have to start with the absolute bedrock of the internet, and that's HTML. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and you can essentially think of it as the skeleton of any website. If you've ever right-clicked a web page and hit View Page Source, you probably saw what looks like a completely chaotic wall of text. But that text is actually HTML, providing the exact layout and structure for literally everything you see on screen, right down to the search bars and download buttons.
A really great way to think about building a website is to compare it to building a house. HTML provides the structural layout, so it dictates where the rooms and walls go. Next, CSS, or cascading style sheets, comes in to handle the design. That's the paint on the walls and the carpet on your floors. And finally, JavaScript brings the logic and functionality. That acts like the electricity and plumbing that actually brings the house to life. But today, we are strictly playing the role of the architect, focusing entirely on building those rooms with HTML.
Moving right along to Section 2, Basic Tags and Elements. Okay, setting up your digital notebook correctly is absolutely crucial. Now sure, you could write HTML in a basic notepad, but professional developers use specialized code editors to make their lives way easier. So this simple 4-step process gives you the exact same setup the pros use. First up, download Visual Studio Code. Then, create a new file named index.html, which is the universal standard for a website's homepage. Next, by simply typing an exclamation mark, a built-in tool called Emmet will automatically generate your boilerplate code. Think of that as the baseline structure every HTML file needs to function. Finally, using a quick extension called Live Server, you can instantly preview your website as you type, without having to constantly hit refresh.
Once your workspace is ready, it really all comes down to tags. HTML relies entirely on tags, which act like containers for your content. Imagine them as little labeled boxes holding your text. A standard element consists of 3 parts. You have an opening tag in angle brackets, the content itself sitting right in the middle, and then a closing tag. That closing tag looks exactly like the opening one, but it includes a /. For example, a P tag stands for paragraph, meaning anything inside that specific container will show up as standard text on your web page.
And it is wild how basic formatting tags can instantly change how your text appears. Let's say we have a sentence about what the Earth would look like if Antarctica completely melted. By wrapping the first half of that sentence in a B tag, we make it bold, instantly grabbing the reader's attention. Then, by wrapping the phrase Antarctica completely melted one day in an I tag, we italicize it. Just like that, we've gone from flat text to structured, styled content using just a couple of keystrokes. Of course, we also need to connect our pages together. We do this using the anchor tag, which is just represented by an A. But when you're creating these links, you absolutely must understand the difference between absolute and relative links. An absolute link is kind of like giving someone a full mailing address to an entirely different building, like sending them all the way over to google.com. A relative link, on the other hand, is a local path. It's like telling someone to just walk down the hall to another room within your own digital house, linking one of your internal files directly to another.
Level 3. Let's get into Section 3, structuring your web page.
To really build good structure, we use semantic tags. Using semantic tags is like clearly labeling the rooms in your house. Instead of just throwing all our text into generic, unnamed containers, we are telling the browser exactly what the content actually is. The header tag holds our top navigation. The main tag holds the core content. The footer holds the bottom contact details, and the aside tag handles secondary things, like sidebar advertisements. This doesn't just make your code way easier to read, it fundamentally boosts your website's SEO or search engine ranking, because search engines can easily map out the logic of your site. Now, within this structure, we run into a concept that's absolutely crucial for managing your layouts: the difference between block and inline elements. Think of block elements, like the div tag, as greedy boxes. Even if they only contain a single word, they will hoard the entire width of the screen, forcing everything else onto a completely new line. Inline elements, like the span tag, well, they're polite boxes.
They only take up the absolute minimum space their content requires, which allows other elements to sit comfortably side by side right next to them.
All right, welcome to the pro level. Section 4, organizing data with tables.
I know tables might seem a little intimidating at first glance, but really, they are just containers nested inside of other containers. You start with the table tag. Inside that, you create a TR, or table row, to slice the table horizontally. Inside that row, you use TH to create bold, centered table headers for your columns, and TD for the actual table data cells. You don't need to memorize these entirely right now, but understanding how rows, headers, and data cells logically nest inside each other, that is the ultimate secret to building grid layouts from scratch.
When you actually nest your headers, like name and roll number, and then place your data cells right below them in subsequent rows, the browser parses those tags and aligns everything beautifully. You get a perfectly structured grid of student data.
Okay, pro tip time for your tables. If you ever need a single header to stretch across 2 or more columns, let's say you want a master title like student information to cover both the name and roll number columns, you use an attribute called colspan. You just pop this inside your tag, and it seamlessly merges those cells together exactly like you would in a spreadsheet application. So we've built the underlying structure, we've formatted our text, and we've organized our complex data into neat tables. But here is a major question to ponder. How does a web page actually capture information back from a user? Reading a page is one thing, but how do we let a user speak back to the website?
That brings us perfectly to our final section, Section 5, building user input forms.
Without forms, the internet would literally just be a static magazine. The form tag is the ultimate interactive bridge between the user typing on their keyboard and the website's back-end data system. With forms, the web becomes a dynamic, two-way street where you can collect usernames, passwords, search queries, and contact requests.
The most crucial thing to remember when building a form is understanding the action attribute. See, an HTML form can collect all the data in the world, but it has to know where to send it once the user actually hits that submit button. The action attribute acts as the handoff. It points directly to a file on the back end, like a PHP script or a JavaScript function on a server, that will securely receive the passwords, validate the emails, and log the user into the system. HTML gathers the package, and the action attribute ensures it gets mailed to the exact right destination.
And just like that, we've gone from an empty plot of digital land to a fully structured coding foundation. You now understand how the walls of the web are built, how to properly label the rooms, and how to interact with your visitors. You've got the blueprint in your hands now. So, what kind of virtual house are you going to build first?